Namaskar and welcome to Daily Global Insights. This is episode 249, a shout out to our viewers to like this program so that it can reach its maximum potential. Today is Monday, and here are the main points. CIA has warned US military of the presence of children as drone strikes hit Kabul. The Kabul airport suicide attacker was freed by Taliban days earlier after spending 4 years in CIA custody for a terror plot targeting New Delhi. Indian Foreign Minister meets Saudi Foreign Minister and Serbian Foreign Minister. Good morning and welcome to PGurus channel, Sridharji. How are you doing today?
Good morning, sir. I'm doing very well, thank you. And good evening to everybody in India, and good morning in West Coast, and good morning in East Coast.
Sir, a fundamental shift in the post 9/11 era funneled trillions in funding away from the rank and file of the defense into the hands of contractors and defense firms. The CIA had warned the US military of the presence of children as the drone strikes hit Kabul. Sridharji, looks like this was a knee-jerk reaction that the United States felt pressure to do something to avenge the killing of the 13 soldiers, and looks like they targeted innocents.
Indeed. So before we get to that, here's the headline, which is, I believe the numbers should be stunning to many of our viewers. If not, from October 2001, since post 9/11, $14 trillion has been spent by United States as part of its total defense. More than 30% went to defense contractors and services firms, roughly representing $4.4 trillion. And then another 1/3 went to defense establishments such as Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and so on. So this just gives you the dimension of the expenditure rather than the baloney stuff that money went for infrastructure and other kinds of activities. So after 14 trillion, what do we have? We have Taliban back in power in Afghanistan. And Iraq, if you recall, has been handed back. By end of the year, the US forces will be withdrawn and Iraq will be on its own. Has all the groups been compromised? The answer is no. They have emerged stronger and better organized. Of course, in Afghanistan, we have $85 billion worth of equipment. On top of that, we said we will avenge the 13 US soldiers who were taken out by a suicide bomber. And as a reciprocal gesture, we chest thumped and said, we are going to take revenge. We are going to act. What did we do? We acted on a truck that carried an NGO, his children, and some civilians. And they apparently were warned by CIA that they were kids. There was no terrorists, and there were no bombers sitting there with their belts wrapped, ready to, blow up. As contrary to the president, contrary to Secretary of State, contrary to Mark Milley, and contrary to Lloyd Austin, all four contradicting on the day when they decided to make this happen. Very unfortunate, sir.
Yes, and the Kabul airport suicide attacker was freed by Taliban days earlier after spending 4 years in CIA custody for a terror plot targeting New Delhi. Afghan schools resume with no girls and no lady teachers as Afghan women protest claiming rights. Sridharji, this was completely forecast. I don't know what these people were thinking. I mean, the more I think about it, the more I'm aghast that the United States essentially abandoned its responsibility of being the peacekeeper in the world.
I think we won't use the word intelligence failure. It seems like intelligence was available, but except people chose to ignore. In many, many instances, this is the most recent one, in many, many instances it has been, including the disowning of the Bagram Air Base and including leaving behind the stuff and assuming that the Afghan forces would fight. The intelligence input suggests otherwise. Now, here we are, that the actual suicide bomber was the one who was in CIA's custody. And one would have assumed that he would have been secured, some of these critical prisoners, and some of the critical assets would have been secured prior to the exit decision. It seems like almost naive and childish. What did the guy do? He comes and blasts. He was supposed to have been doing some work in India, similar dirty work, when he was apprehended.
And Senate parliamentarian blocks Democrats from including amnesty in the budget reconciliation process, citing violation of chamber rules. Texas state troopers seal off the US Mexico border, the scene of thousands of illegals taking shelter under the bridge. GOP anger brews as Biden and Democrats play politics and rationing of COVID-19 treatment of protocols to the red states. I thought Mr. Biden said he was going to be the uniting president. What an irony, sir.
He's a uniting president of Democrats. I don't know if he's a uniting president of America. I don't think he meant that. He meant united president of Democrats. Let me give you a couple of my observations. Some of the criticism that we have seen to our own programs when we critiqued the democratic decisions, you saw the supporters come in and make their observations. Also, in the most recently posted couple of articles, I've seen some of the observations, even as what you call extreme as that we don't know the U.S. politics. That typically reflects an average mindset of a Democratic voter. It also represents the Biden administration and many of his policies. For example, we talked about the other news items. When the bioclonal treatment was monoclonal treatment was having an impact, and they were addressing the issue in Florida, he suddenly basically has rationed the allocation of that. He has rationed the allocation of the vaccines. So what this points out to you is his focus more seems to be in consolidation in the democratic states. And that seems to be the running trend. All the policies, the Biden agenda policies, is more anti-business, anti-capitalistic, more socialistic, and more dispensation, including the border surges. These border surges, lo and behold, now they have come to realize a lot of the illegals who are in the border are Haitians. So therefore, they only want the Central Americans to come in, not the Haitians. So they are organizing deportation flights to deport these Haitian illegals in the border. So what's happened to the others? No, they are not considered illegals. They're somehow considered as citizens coming back into this country. And if that is the case, why they are illegal? So you are seeing a broad cross-section of decisions that Mr. Biden is making, led by the progressive group, as we covered yesterday, which is targeted at his constituency. They tried to get this amnesty passed, which is, and I wrap up, the amnesty passed through the, by tacking it with the budget, that's been declined.
And Sridharji, I'm reminded of a few years ago when I think it was Uttar Pradesh State Assembly, it captured a fight between the ruling party MLAs and the opposition, where they were taking anything that they could lay their hands on and then throwing it across the site. The whole thing was captured on television. I'm expecting something very similar to that happening in our own Congress. I think this partisanship has gone way too out of control. Madam Pelosi, here's a sincere request. Members of your progressives are out of control, each one trying to outrage the other. One wants the police to be completely disbanded and sent home. The other one wants to wear a garish I don't know what to say. It was a garish dress saying tax the rich. What did the rich do? If you have a problem with something, then go after them legally. This is just outrageous. United States is already still at a high tax base, and they're going to try and raise it even more. I think, you're killing the golden goose that lays the golden eggs. And I don't understand why they have to do this. Anyway, this is my point. Quad meet kicks off on September 24th in White House with security, supply chains, and COVID the focus. the United Nations will be meeting on climate. Sridharji, what are your expectations from the Quad meeting, given that US has gone about creating multiple quads, the whole thing has lost meaning, and every country that they think they are supporting is also nervous, given how they allowed the Taliban to just walk in?
My expectations are very tempered. And as you would expect from this, would be some kind of symbolism plus a welcome diversion that is needed for Mr. Biden to demonstrate he still has a foreign policy, because thus far his foreign policy has been an abysmal disaster. Okay, even on Quad. So just as he gets into the Quad meeting, he has instigated a fight between France, UK, and Australia, and two of them are primary Quad members, being US and Australia. And France has not been too far behind. It is almost, I would say, ahead of UK, and UK joined the game a bit late. So you have an aspiring Quad member with whom they picked up fight. Having said that, what would they achieve? Back to the climate accord would be one, which is to say, the world needs to focus, otherwise we are going to have the next disaster. Second, we have a supply chain issue on silicon wafers. We must move away from China. That's number two. Again, we all support open maritime boundaries, and we all must put our forces together, which they have been doing anyway. So that's the third. And the fourth, if I have, is the vaccines, which they have staggered. And, we talked about this, why they delayed Covaxin approval and deferred it to October 5th when they could have. They were afraid the Covaxin could become one of the beachheads in terms of export of vaccines to the rest of the world. So they would say, now we need to use the existing protocols and those that have been approved, and probably giving impetus to Pfizer, followed by Moderna, and perhaps, who knows, to Johnson & Johnson. That's what I see coming out.
An Indian foreign minister meets the Saudi foreign minister and the Serbian foreign minister. Chinese military conducts military drills with advanced equipment despite the high-level talks with India along the line of actual control. Sridharji, we are now beginning to see some other voices emerge in the Indian setup. For example, the CDS, the Chief of Defense Services, he had said something which the External Affairs Minister promptly rebuffed and said, no, what he's saying is not true. India is committed. So there are some odd, discordant voices coming out of India, and this new military drills, it could be that China has seen a sort of a chink in the armor. Your thoughts, sir?
China is never stops. Okay. So whether we have these kinds of inconsistent statements or inconsistencies that is being felt, China never wavers. China has got a strategy of using every tool and technique that is available. It creates problems through Taliban. It creates problems through Pakistan. It creates problems through jihadis. It never left the border. It has always been in the border. Mr. Xi Jinping was in the border, in Xi, and he supervised and he galvanized. The train ran and the soldiers arrived. So the drills are going on. I don't know whether whether this was a momentary lapse or whether there was an issue, but I just don't see. But what I have heard, which is probably what I've heard is the army has been given the mandate to make such decisions as far as the border is concerned when dealing with China. As far as the diplomatic is concerned, probably that they may go on in the side. But at the end of the day, the army has been given the mandate to go ahead and do what is needed. This is what I hear. It doesn't mean that, what I'm hearing is correct, but this is what I hear.
And Australia says it was upfront with France over the submarine deal as the fallout continues. Morrison and Macron will be talking soon, and the trade discussions are unlikely to stop. That's what we are given to understand. The rise in COVID cases and the lockdowns result in violent clashes and protests in Australian cities. Remember, Australia and New Zealand prided themselves on the fact that they had the COVID completely under control. So this violent clashes is a bit of a surprise. Sridharji, what do you make of it?
I think people are fed up and tired of lockdowns. People are just fed up and tired. This is not going to go away. It's just like any epidemic. Now this happens to be a pandemic. It's a virus. It's going to go up and down. I think Australian position has been too extreme precaution. Even people, United States has 9 million. 9.5 million, I think right now, as I didn't see the numbers as I came into the show, somewhere around past 9 million. We're getting on with life. Same with UK, 1.325 million or 1.3 million getting on. So it's time Australia recognizes and gets on with it. Another country which is getting on but on the alert is Singapore. They're seeing 1,000 cases per day, much smaller population and also much narrower island. But they're saying that there are restrictions, but they're not allowing people to go overboard on this. So I think this is what you're seeing this in Europe as well. People are fed up. They're saying, we're not going to be bogged down by this virus and get ourselves locked down, sir.
And I'm hearing some horror stories coming out of Brazil, wherein they said that there was a new virus strain that was attacking younger people. And for them, when they were administered the oxygen tanks, they needed to be sedated. Turns out that Brazil ran out of sedatives. And in order to still save the people, they actually had to chain them on their beds. Very, very sad if that is true. And we are trying to, make sure that what we heard is right. So let's wait and see. We will keep you updated on that. France cancels defense meeting with the United Kingdom over the submarine row. Macron to speak with Biden on the submarine deal. French foreign minister agrees with his Indian counterpart to work towards a new multilateral international order to meet global challenges. Vladimir Putin party on track to win Russian elections. That is a sham of a democracy. That's just my opinion. Sridharji, your thoughts?
Well, Russian Tsar is Vladimir Putin, and he conducts the elections the way he sees it. I no longer want to critique anybody on the conduct and process of elections as a U.S. citizen, having seen the worst end of the stick here. So somebody is going to come and say, hey, who are you guys to talk about elections? You can't even conduct your own elections with very archaic system. But that's what Vladimir is going to say. I think he mentioned that to Mr. Biden as well in his one-on-one conversations. Basically, you better learn how to conduct your own elections. Don't come and teach to me. Now, with regard to France, with regard to the foreign minister speaking with the Indian External Affairs Minister, this is just an example as to how the bilateral discussions go. Remember, both the External Affairs Minister as well as Prime Minister Modi will be in person for the Quad meet, which is about 4 days away on September 24th. But the French minister rightly notes we need a new order. We need a new international coalition. And he is right. And Minister for External Affairs is right. So what does that mean to Quad? That just means to Quad is we'll continue to meet as part of our security discussion while we try to find a new order, which actually is going to put ships and boots on ground to defend against any incursion from China.
Sir, I also heard something more that transpired in that conversation between Putin and Biden. The hunter could have become the hunted, but we will wait and see. Could low morale in the PLA be one of the Achilles' heel that China tries to hide with rhetoric? Indonesian ISIS leader killed in police shootout. A third Iranian tanker carrying oil to Lebanon cited to ease the energy crisis, however, in violation of sanctions. Iran nuclear chief arrives in Vienna for IAEA talks as the discussions hold in balance. Sridharji, your thoughts quickly before we move on to the next item.
Well, first and foremost, I think that the IAEA, I mentioned about Iran. Iran is moving forward with its own plans and actions. There's nobody to enforce. So therefore, all this UN charter and sanctions is completely redundant. The Iranian foreign minister is in Vienna to meet with the IAEA representative, so that goes on. ISIS-K operative, Indonesia is still on the track. You can see some of these people now come out of their woodwork as ISIS-K and ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Taliban fight out. So we're going to see more such activity, and I'm glad that they have taken out one of those, bad boys in Indonesia in a police shootout. You can see, there he's in the urban area where you required a police battle. So what you're beginning to see is the slow and steady uptick in this activity around the globe, and we'll see more of it.
And Netanyahu mocks Biden in a video about the US-Israel meeting. Mossad assassinated Iran chief nuclear scientist with a remote-assisted artificial intelligence sniper rifle. Iran denies such claims. This is the last item for today, sir. Please go ahead and tell us what you think about what's happening in and around Israel, the three eyes, of course, and then we can call a wrap.
Well, I think we had covered in Daily Global Insights, there could be potential Israel hand in the assassination of the chief nuclear scientist of Iran, and this happened in and around the nuclear plant where he probably lives. It was dismissed as probably an internal rebel, but now it's coming out that they have used this AI technology. I don't know the specifics, but the AI technology, and using a rifle, they seem to have taken him out, which is basically some kind of a location capability. Having said that, what we are seeing around Israel is it suddenly finds itself in the center of a big dilemma. Naftali Bennett's visit was not very successful to United States. In fact, the one that you are referring to, mocking by Benjamin Netanyahu, he was saying that it looks like Mr. Biden was sleeping when Naftali Bennett was speaking. So we don't know whether he was hearing or whether he was sleeping. So that just tells you that the importance that Mr. Bennett got from Mr. Biden in his conversations. He politely turned him back and basically said, well, you have no authority from us to do any unilateral action, while his defense minister, IDF, Israeli defense minister, prepared a plan to tackle the Iran nuclear issue. So he has come back saying he endorses Plan B. In the meanwhile, just around him, you have in Lebanon, they are continuing to receive shipments from an economic support point of view, while rockets continue to fire from both Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza into Israel. There's one strategic activity that Israel has started off, which is oil drilling near the waters where Lebanon is contesting those waters with US Halliburton. So there are some activities where Israel is moving forward on its own, but it seems like the support that it had received from US before, that emphatic support seems missing.
Yes, and to know a little bit more about the warring groups inside the Democratic Party, do watch Sridharji's hangout with me on last Sunday. And this talks about the scenario, who are the different players, who's trying to establish themselves. We know the loudmouths, but we don't know the silent people who are also laying landmines. Overall, this Biden administration, I'm afraid, is not really very focused, and they have multiple voices. Sometimes they contradict themselves, but be that as it may, we'll be back tomorrow to give you the latest around the world. Thanks for watching. Do like our videos as soon as it starts airing, because we would like to make this reach as many viewers as possible. Sridharji, namaskar, and see you tomorrow.
Namaskar, thank you. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and see you all tomorrow.